Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuti.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third boating economic forecast. Today, we're going to talk about the resilience of the boating industry, that is, sector scenarios and market scenarios in this new normal era. First of all, I would like to introduce the speakers. My name is Stefano Pagani Snardi. I had the study office of the Marine Industry Association, Marco Fortis from Edison Foundation. For the last 5 years, they've helped us publish the boating industry in figures, la nautica and cifre. Thank you so much. Then we have the new chairman of Assilea, the Italian Lease Association, Carlo Mescieri. This is his first public appearance since he was elected. Well, I chose the sector with one of the strongest sectors. Then Francesco Tilli, Chief External Relations Officer from CIMEST. Thank you for being with us today. And Philip is still the Secretary General of the European Boating Industry, EBI. And then, before introducing our host, let me remind you that this conference is being streamed live on the website of Italian paper Il Sole 24 Ore and Genoa Boat Show website. President Cecchi, please introduce this conference for our speakers and public. The floor to you. Good morning, everyone. I'll be really brief in my opening remarks. A couple of remarks regarding the boat show. We wanted this boat show to be efficient and safe, and we've made it. As I said yesterday, we opened the first international boat show the leading one at a European and perhaps at a world level. The whole world is looking upon us with great admiration and probably some envy too. Because, opening this boat show, considering the current COVID-19 pandemics and the current conditions, wasn't easy, but we made it, thanks to a very efficient organization and a very strict protocol. The Technical Scientific Committee had to review 180 pages. That was the document we submitted to them. Then we really could celebrate because we received the authorization to hold the boat show 10 days before the opening date. Of course, I had already started signing documents while waiting for that. Anyway, I'm really happy and proud that we really achieved this important goal. Now, we have 19 days left to the 1st of November. And that's, I'm talking about the leasing sector now, because some rules are going to expire. Yesterday, we managed to achieve a great result because all lease contracts signed by the 30th of October will apply old rules. However, we now need to achieve more, and we need to define and draw up final rules. I talked to the minister yesterday, and I said to her, we don't want any special advantages or benefits. We want to be on an even fields. We are leaders, and as leaders, we have to be there when these rules are discussed. But as I said, we don't want any special conditions or advantages. We risk receiving a procedure for breaking the rules in Europe, while in France they simply get a little later. There are countries that are imposing VAT percentages for the boating industry as they do for hotels, while we in Italy, we keep applying all the rules, we keep abiding by the rules, while other countries do whatever they want, but this is not fair. I said to the minister, we want to have an even field. We don't want others to have special conditions or advantages. Professor Micheri, you were recently appointed, and over the last few weeks, I could really perceive the great synergy between the Italian Marine Industry Association and Asilea. Your team, very well led by the General Director, Mr. Macchiola, my person in charge of institutional relations, had many incredibly long meetings, 3 hours, 3.5 hours long, to explain to the Revenue Agency and to the Italian Ministry for the Economy, that we're not asking this for us, for ourselves, but it's for the Revenue Agency, because they're going to lose VAT and tax revenues. You are a lucky president, just like me, because you can have fantastic chairmen and presidents, very competent ones, but if they don't have a good organization behind them, they won't get anywhere. If you have having a good skipper is important, but without a good crew and a good team, you'll get nowhere. Thank you, and I wish you every success in this conference. Thank you, President Cecchi. Now, let me remove the mask. So this morning, we have 2 different sessions. First of all, the boating sector in figures data will be presented, and we'll keep that as short as possible so we can leave room for a short, quick round table with our speakers. So we publish data over the last few years. We use Monitor. Monitor was published early March, well, usually it's published early March. This year, we managed to publish it before the COVID-19 pandemics and emergency. So, of course, the estimates were a bit more optimistic than what we can really expect now. Now, this is not Monitor. This is the new boating sector in figures. That is the the autumn edition. We called it log because, you know, in boats, a log measures things. So we are actually measuring the trends in our market, in our industry. Of course, we're more than happy to be working under the auspices of the Ministry for Transport and Infrastructures. And as of today, the English version of log is also available. It's very much appreciated at an international level. This is the trend of the Italian boating industry turnover. That includes boat builders, boat yards, accessories, and engines, which means only industrial components. Over the last 5 years, there was a very strong growth that, as you can see here, brought us back to nearly 5 billion euros. And if we have a look at 2019, 2019 was the 5th year in a row in terms of double-digit growth. I think that's a record for industries, not just in Italy, but even at a European level. And we're really proud of that. This means that from the minimum levels that we reached when the Monti tax was introduced, we've really recovered considerably. Those were very tough years. We really have to be grateful to all the companies in our sectors for this important achievement. These are the basic data for our sector. That is 4.7 billion euros. That's the overall turnover, plus 12% as against last year. And all other indicators are more or less in line with this. Well, of course, not the number of employees. That's always slower than the overall turnover. But this year, we still have a 5.4% increase with a total number of 23,500 direct employees. Let's remember that our sector has a very high industry, very high indicators. That means for every directly employee in the sector, another 9 indirectly employed people derive. Well, we account for 2 per mil per thousand of our Italian GDP. This is a breakdown by segments and sectors. So we have the shipyards, that also includes repairs and refitting, and that amounts for about 2/3 of the overall turnover. Then we have equipment, which has been growing steadily over the last few years, and then engines. And you see all the figures in the last column on the right-hand side. Now we have data regarding exports out of our national production. In the upper scheme, you can see exports account for 76% of production. That gets to 86% when we talk about the production of new pleasure boats. Of course, the lease sector could perhaps reduce this tendency towards export, of course, if that means strengthening the domestic market. And that's what we're really hoping for. Over the last few years, we've seen a slow but constant growth. And then accessories, well, of course, accessories supply our own shipbuilders, and we rank second in the world. So 50% goes to export, and about 50% is for the domestic market. I think we can go more in depth when we read about when you read the book. So you can find more details in the book. You can also receive a PDF file. And now I would like to give the floor to Marco Fortis so he can tell us about our foreign trade trends. Thank you. Well, thank you for the invitation. For Edison Foundation, taking part in this publication is really important. We have selected some data on which I would like to focus today. The first is the very significant share in terms of both exports and international trade balance played by several sectors. When we talk about means of transports, here we have other means of transports. That includes cruise liners and the aerospace industry. So the share, I was saying, the share of sports watercrafts and pleasure boats has increased from 1999 to 2019 from 8.3% to 15.9%. So this is the share regarding the export sector. While if we talk about the trade balance, this leap forward was from 20.8% to 29.2%. Having a look at the next slide, we see that sports watercrafts and pleasure boats are in the top 10 in the 10 best ranking sectors in terms of growth from 1999 to 2019. Let me say that this is a sector where there are not so many large groups. Well, there are a few large groups, but mainly these are small and medium-sized enterprises, which means they don't create the same flywheel effect of other sectors in the first 10 places. Let's think about, for example, the pharmaceutical industry, where there are multinational companies investing in Italy, or, for example, coffee, chocolate, and so on, which are led by an Italian immense group that is the leader at an international level. While the pleasure boats and sportscraft sector is very Italian. There are some foreign investors, but it's a very Italian sector, and still steel,
poi
it
lentamente in
can
sostituzione
boast
prima
a
del legno, poi dell'acciaio, si andò consolidando questa
275.8% increase
tecnologia.
over the last
Vi
20
furono diversi
years.
brevetti, diciamo che
Well,
quello di NB
obviously,
fu quello
there
che
are
più
some
apicamente ebbe maggior
output
successo.
markets for
Lui da
Italy.
Parigi
We are
organizzò una
going to
rete di
see the
vendita
first five. The
incredibile in tutto il
first
mondo,
market
e
towards
qui
which
noi avevamo
Italy
l'ingegner
is
Forchetti, che
exporting
era
pleasure
nostro
boats,
referente,
inboard
diciamo, per il
engine
regno
pleasure boats and
Sardegna,
yachts,
Piemonte,
and that's
Liguria e
really the
Sardegna, e
excellence
quindi
of our
sbarcò. Tenete
segment.
conto che a
The
Genova
first
il primo
market
vero
is the
edificio
USA,
cementato è il
$386 million, then the Cayman
mercato
Islands,
dove ha fatto il
then
bar adesso,
Malta,
dove hanno quella
which
struttura lì
covers the
centrale,
Mediterranean basin, France,
quella è
and
la
then
prima
Australia. So
vera
these
struttura
are
di
the
Elevita, che
first
non
five
quella
destination markets for Italy. At least in
dell'edificio.
2019, these
Dunque
were
il
the
cemento
first five.
armato a quei
Then, if we
tempi
talk about
rappresenta
our
una svolta, la
international
modernità
positioning,
nell'edilizia.
I think we should not focus
Con
so
quali
much on
vantaggi?
Ma i
export
vantaggi erano
data. Of
di
course,
tre
even
tipi.
if we rank
Soprattutto,
second
guardi,
after the Netherlands,
gli
and
impresari
in
mal
2019,
mal avevano
we
digerito la
had
struttura
an overall
meccanica, che era un po'
amount
troppo
of
lontana dalle loro
$2.6
problemi
million,
di esecuzione, di
15%
specializzazione in
of the
manodopera,
world export in the
in
entire
più
sector, but I would like to
l'industria,
focus
diciamo,
even
l'acciaio
more
dipendeva
on
dalle
the
miniere,
following
sia per
slide.
l'estrazione dei
That is
metalli,
the
dei
first
minerali
10
metallici, sia per
countries in
l'estrazione del
terms
coke,
of
eccetera. E
trade
quindi tutto il mondo
balance.
che
When
viene
we see
rappresentato dai
Italy's
naturalisti
specialization, we can
francesi,
see
no,
that
da Sovà,
Italy
eccetera,
is the
e
leader in the
quel
world with
movimento
2.2
grosso intorno alle
billion
miniere, ecco, quindi con dei disordini, dei problemi sociali molto forti, si
dollars
ribaltava sulle dita.
at a world level. So again, we remain leaders.
Non vedevano l'ora di
Well, after all, the order book for super yachts is clearly showing that 50% of that is to and for Italian shipbuilders. So we can really be proud of this.
Sì, poi insomma, si prestava
We
poco alla forma,
started by listening to President Czech about the lease sector. Let's now talk about the more recent trends in this strategic sector for the Italian domestic market. President Mesheri, thank you. I want to thank the President of Confindustria Nautica for his kind invitation. In his remarks, he underlined the great synergy between the Marine Industry Association and Asilea. Well, statistical data should always be taken with a pinch of salt, so I'm always saying approximately, but approximately 90% of sales
l'edificio di Le Corbusier, tanto per
boats
perché NB non è che avesse una
made through leasing.
NB che è la tecnologia che noi troviamo all'interno, cioè le 250 canne di cemento armato che costituiscono il silo, quindi NB
decided to follow the lead of France that was favoring the acquisition of boats, the purchase of boats, through the leasing for contracts, through leasing contracts. So and this is a strategic decision. I don't want to repeat what the other speaker just said, but I want to highlight that this year, 2020, the year of COVID-19, all sectors, the real estate, lease, transport, and so on, they all have a negative figures, as is the case for the Italian GDP. In the first 6 months of this year, we have a minus 17% as against the 2019 in terms of Italian GDP. The whole lease sector has a minus 25%, and that, of course, is a long-term sector for fixed investments. All sectors are in the negative, of course, except the boating industry. So the fact that in 9 months in 2020, we have already achieved the same figures of 2019, and this is the year of COVID-19, I repeat, well, if you ask me why, well, it would be difficult to say why. There is also some psychological aspect related to some tax-related issues and so on. Let me just say that we'll take this as a good omen, as a sign of trust on the part of consumers. In 2021, of course, our problems and concerns will not be over, but let me congratulate the organizers, because last Monday, Mr. Bonomi, the president of the Italian Confederation of Italian Industry, he talked about optimism, and I think you are to be thanked for that too, because you've been really good. So we're going to have even more hurdles. Over the last 9 months, we at have achieved what was achieved in the whole of 2019. So what is the trend? The trend says that lease contracts with individuals is increasing, while the ones with companies is decreasing. And why is that? We wrote on the slide why.
Those who work in the sector know that companies have a business, a trade activity, and if you go against this, well, there will be a drop. But in terms of individuals, well, there is a growth. We also have an encouraging sign. And this has involved support in the performance of lease contracts in 2020. If we had the northern area where leasing contract dominated remarkably in the January-July period of 2020, so we are speaking of this year, leasing in northern accounts for 52%, while there is a remarkable growth in southern Italy and in the islands. So marina infrastructures is showing a return, so they have an impact, a share of 20% in the south. So this is a fact that contributes to the territorial inclusion.
La stessa, armatura un po' delle strutture
that has been fixed by the government in the use of funds from the recovery fund
previsti molto forti,
però
con delle soluzioni strutturali che oggi non
say that as far as leasing is concerned, we are quite brief because we have that plus 30%. We've already done in 9 months what we've done during the whole year last year, and we are satisfied. Let us hope that this will also have an impact on the other sectors of real economy. Perhaps we shall discuss this even further. Professor Fortis, to end this overview on 2019 data, can you tell us about the specialized sectors
diciamo che è un materiale che in Italia
non
avendo una
very
tradizione di acciaio, perché non è un
for us as experts, because we analyze these local districts which falls within the general study of industrial districts, that is territorial areas of Italian manufacturing sectors. We have observed in recent years 5 specific districts here represent the Tyrrhenian district for the boating sector, the Adriatic district, Lombardy, the Turin area, and the Naples area. These are 5 specific areas.
La tesa è per il progetto, perché è tutto lì.
Group 325 businesses, that is more than half of those that exist in this sector, with an important number of employees. And these are 7,461 out of a total of 9,620, with a turnover of 2.7 billion euros in the turnover, which accounts for 85% of the overall turnover, which is represented by these 5 areas, and then export, which also includes value, since we do not have specific data in terms of these local districts. They also include shipyards in general. However, it is significant because when we analyze some specific districts where we do not have the cruise vessel shipyards, we have 58 million euros, which accounts for the boating sector. If we continue also with the slides, you can see the provinces with a greater presence, both in terms of turnover and employees. You see the blue are the Italian provinces, which have a bigger share in this sector. So we have Lucca with Viareggio, which is, let's say, the capital of Italy in terms of turnover and employees in this sector. But we also see that the whole Tyrrhenian district is not so dark, but equally important than the Adriatic district, focusing on Rimini, Forlì Cesena, Pesaro, Urbino. And then we have Lombardy and the province of Turin with important groups, and the Naples area, both with regard to the turnover and to the number of employees. So what's important is also the Naples area. As for southern Italy, for development of leasing contracts, well, this is quite interesting because port facilities and marinas facilities have been upgraded, and this is a resource that we've only partially exploited. So if we could channel some of European funds for marina infrastructure in southern Italy, both for the transport of cargo, but also for the boating sector, well, this would be important because we think that there is an enormous potential, both from a geographical point of view and also in terms of the landscape. Now here we see an equally important datum, that is the destinations that have diversified areas, different destinations. Let us look at the main destination market in export. And we have the Cayman Island, then we have Malta, Australia, and the United Kingdom, and British Virgin Islands. This is for the Tyrrhenian area, while for the Adriatic area we have Cyprus, United States, Cayman, France, and Panama, 5th place. This for the destination of exports of the two major areas in our sector. Of course, registration and flags are important for super yachts. Yes, of course, according to specialization, this has an impact. Now we are within the time set. Now we shall start with a round table. This is what everybody's been waiting for. So which are the trends in the boating industry? And we spoke yesterday, we provided an overview of the whole industry, both in terms of number of shipyards, producers of accessories, and also on the turnover. And during lockdown, there were estimates that were not good. Mid-April, we had expected a negative impact for our industry with a 13% drop with a lockdown up to mid-April. Fortunately, the season was better than expected. And so this is the picture we were told by our companies. We are speaking of the nautical year, the boating year, we then look at figures in the solar year, so there are 3 months to go yet. Seen as they are here, well, this you can see the impact of the pandemics. But if we look at them in detail, in segments, it's a rather heterogeneous situation. We have a lot of companies that said that they improved, some also plus 20, but we also have minus 20. But the slices of this pie chart are rather similar in size. And this means that these boating years had different aspects according to the sectors, to the type of companies, and to the markets of reference. So what does this tell us? Well, everything is still possible. Let's see what happens this period between the Genoa the Genoa Boat Show and January with the Düsseldorf. So we'll see in terms of stocks, orders of super yachts and new products, and based on the data of these 3 months, and we hope Genoa will contribute remarkably, just like all other shows that were not held. This was the first, and from here we must start again for the future market. So at the end of the year, we'll see if this minus 13 that was hypothesized can be brought onto more positive figures. Now we do not have so the final overview. We spoke of export, of the importance of the foreign markets, and now I would take the opportunity of the Secretary General of EBI, Philip Istil, to ask him what happens outside Italy, what's happened in the main markets in Europe, both for the industry and for the nautical tourism.
I will do my very best.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for the question, and thank you very much.
We've started. Thank you.
On such a great show, I think it's something as a European boating industry we can be proud of. This being the first international boat show after COVID-19, I think that's really something fantastic. But yes, going into the sort of main market trends, I think the slide you just showed, actually, Stefano, is a very good description of the European situation. Some countries are up, some countries are down, some countries are stable. But I'll try and give a bit of an overview of the main, let's say, European countries and how they're doing. Starting a bit with France, and I think the numbers you showed, I think in terms of a progression over the last years, the development has been very positive. In 2019, turnover was up by 5%, employment was up by 2.1%, so the development has been positive. And then, of course, COVID-19 came. The French Federation FIN anticipates a drop of somewhere between 15 and 30% of revenue for this year. Very different depending on the subsector and the region. For example, companies that are operating in the charter business, especially those further abroad, are of course more impacted, for example. In Germany, that's definitely a country on the up, I would say. Since May, since the end of lockdown, there's been a very positive trend due to a very strong domestic leisure and tourism interest. So the trade and charter sector in Germany has done incredibly well. And I understand that some companies, as we saw here as well, will actually see a revenue growth this year compared to 2019. There's some caveats, of course, for German companies that are operating charter with Mediterranean bases, especially those on islands. They have, of course, been very much impacted because there's simply been less flights, etc. But on the positive side, again, for example, in Germany, we're seeing that boating licenses have very much increased this year. So there's been an increase of up to 30% of new boating licenses in Germany. So that's a very positive sign of people being interested in boating, and very, very much also for the next years in terms of what that means for new boat sales. Coming to Poland, of course, another very important market. There, the dayboat market and the domestic charter sector have also done very well. And that has been, in fact, part of the reason of that is that the Polish government has added a holiday voucher scheme to use in Poland. And that has been really interesting to drive domestic tourism in Poland. and also to drive boating tourism in Poland. So there's been a much higher domestic interest in boating in Poland than has been seen in the past years. In terms of production, which is of course very important in Poland, the autumn production schedules are very much on target for most companies, so the boat yards are producing as in the last year, so another positive sign. Moving to a Mediterranean country, Spain, there of course the market has seen a sharp decline in the first months of COVID, but also that has been recuperated, and I think they estimate that the impact will be around 15% decrease. And though, of course, also in Spain, we've seen some positive developments. There's a lot of new interest in boating and a lot of new boaters coming into the market because of the enforced domestic holidays. On the sort of negative side, there have been fewer super yachts visiting Spain because of restrictions, and they have simply stayed elsewhere in the world. So that has, of course, had an impact on the refit yards in Spain, which are, of course, very important. Another and the last country that I want to mention is Finland, because I think that's a very interesting example. In Finland, we've seen an increase in boat registrations, really high increase, simply because people have not gone abroad, but they are staying in Finland, and there's a much higher interest in domestic holidays. And the summer cottages, which are very important in Finland, they've seen a lot of activity, and also that has led to a high increase in small boat sales, but also in new engine sales and boats being refitted, etc. And also the second-hand market is booming in Finland. To provide some numbers there, exports in Finland went down by 5% roundabout this year, and imports are stable compared to 2019. So to provide a bit of a European picture and also to take into account the other countries I did not mention, I think one can say that the impact is definitely not as bad as we feared when we first met with all our EBI members back in March virtually, where we were really quite worried. But I think we have seen three distinct periods that have really defined this year. The first period of lockdown, marina closures, border closures, supply chain challenges up until the end of May, which has impacted the industry. But then since, I would say, end of May, early June, until around about now, end of August, we've seen a lot of interest in boating, which is fantastic. A lot of domestic holiday travel for boating, but also still some traveling within Europe to go boating in the Mediterranean and other parts of Europe. I would say since the end of August, we have a third period, I would say, which is increase in travel restrictions, thankfully not to Italy, so I can be here, but for example to Croatia, from Germany to the Netherlands, and that's impacted, of course, the charter sector in those countries, and also very much the marinas as well. So I think, looking at all countries, the strength of the industry and to what extent they've increased or reduced has been a sort of a product of how long these distinct periods have been, but also in terms of the domestic capacity to spend money on tourism, on leisure spending. So I think that sort of hopefully provided a bit of an overview of where we are with main European markets, but I would be glad to answer any further questions. Back to you, Stefano.
Thank you, Philip. Quindi insomma abbiamo visto che anche in Europa ci sono stati impatti.
We saw that there have been positive impacts also in Europe and on the boating sector. We've attracted new people who spent their holidays in a different way, and these could be the boaters and the owners of tomorrow. So we spoke of internationalization, of how our companies are targeted and focused on the international markets, and certainly COVID did not help at the beginning. And there were big support and subsidies from some sectors that understood the problems immediately and tried the way to adapt tools that were already existing to limit the impact on businesses. Dr. Tilly, thank you for being here with us. And I would ask you to tell us what these new tools made available to our enterprises, not only of small and medium-sized companies, that can be used this uncertain time. Thank you very much for inviting me to such an important event at worldwide level. This is a best in class. So in this particular event and edition, it is quite important to be here because we wanted to testify the activity that we are trying to develop to support these sectors. And the figures we saw give us a snapshot of an excellence in the sector, which is, and it is essential to adapt the tools that have been adapted to this specific time and what we will consider to be the new normal. And in recent months, starting from the initial difficulties, both from a pandemic point of view, from an economic point of view, that is digitalization and expansion of actions, extension of the ability of acting on businesses as many tools were for small and medium-sized companies, but in this case they were also extended to all companies of all sizes. Some were operating outside the EU, now also within the EU, and even in Italy for specific events. So we managed to support this complex time the dynamic projection not only abroad but also in our countries. So an expansion, and we've seen that companies are answering and are reacting positively, as we also see from our foreign minister yesterday, to use these tools from the funds. We received 1.2 billion euros, and this is quite difficult to distribute to operators, but of course we have to meet all needs. And government and parliament, since the decree of August and with the recovery funds, we want to give further space, and in a specific period of time, that is at least for 5 years. We intend to support companies for 5 years. This is not just because I'm representing it here, but Minister Di Maio, Undersecretary Di Stefano, repeated this. And so I am supported by such a clear engagement and undertaking. So they've answered requirements. We estimate that we shall support companies with 5-fold actions with respect to the past. And we have the possibility to have digital tools that do not require long time for implementation. And so procedures should be rather rapid, online, and companies can therefore concentrate in detailing the core of their projects. I apologize for repeating myself. The commander is present, the master is present, the team really exists. Let's hope we can win this match, this competition. Well, we as an association have communicated with our members to illustrate that there are many tools that were not used up to yesterday that now are available to companies. Now, I would end this first round table giving you further data. We spoke of scenarios 2021. Of course, it's too early to say anything now, but we have a poll on our members, and we ask them what they expect from next year. That is the year that starts from today. we have interesting data. 8 companies out of 10 expect stability, if not growth, for 2021. So it means that despite uncertainties, there is trust and confidence in the fact that the season that's just ended is given to companies now. If we perhaps had asked this in May, we would have had 100% red area. But this is a positive step forward for the market. The boat show is a strategic element for our industry, and it's difficult to think of a market without a boat show. So our effort was really important and necessary, not for us as an association or organization, but particularly for the exhibitors that came to Genoa. Now, let us go back to the domestic market. We spoke of challenges. Let us go back to leasing. What do we expect for the future? So, despite the fact that in Italy 3 years ago we obtained a civil law on leasing, clarify that when we discuss a reference for leasing companies, but for the market, this is quite clear. There is a civil law. We've always had a tax law for leasing, but not in the boating sector. It's never been discussed here. But in Italy, we are top of the class because we are financial institutions, we're not banks. So we have a supervision like in banks. So the market is transparent because there is a law, there is a tax law, and there is a supervision to protect the market by the Bank of Italy. This is not so in France or in Germany.
Compared to our surveillance. We are not afraid of any surveillance. We like to be surveilled by the Bank of Italy, but we would like the same treatment in the other countries. Otherwise, we are challenged by an unfair competition because my French and German colleagues, when they come to Italy, they are surveyed with a light surveillance. Il leasing è uno strumento assolutamente.
Leasing is a very important tool, and I already said that we have a clear civil law, a tax law, and vigilance and supervision to protect the market. But leasing is a funding tool, and I apologize if there's somebody from the banking market, but I'm speaking of objective issues. When the bank issues a fund, makes money available to businesses, and then the entrepreneur has to deal with the legal owner of the non-economic, the legal ownership belongs to the customer. And we have a series of rules that we have to comply with. And all these rules are services. A real estate lease means guaranteeing customer that it is regular from a cadastral point of view. And on a machine, leasing on a machine means respect on the environment. And also safety at work. This is leasing. Leasing is a tool that, with respect to all bank tools, accounts for 15%. Of course, a bank have a short-term bonds and the overdrafts, and all different types of loans. And so leasing accounts for 15%. But this probably means something, because it intermediates 2/3 of the 17 accounts. it's 2/3, but we are brokers of 2/3 of contributions. This is money that reaches craftsmanship also. There are two dangers. The first, which is not a fiscal issue, IFRS 16. If the audience will have to take account of the leasing as FCA or other groups belonging to that 5% of the Italian economy, well, I would think about this, because already we have some disadvantages with respect to a European law, and when we have a real European bank union, there will be an adaptation of the supervision to the Italian laws. So we're already under the supervision of the Bank of Italy, and so what we ask for, before we ask small and medium-sized companies and craftsmen to adapt their rules, well, we have to think about it, and we don't want to further damage our economic system, because the backbone of our economy is given by small and medium-sized companies and craftsmen, you know.
Your country. Quindi questo è il primo.
So this is the first point. The second is difference in supervision that allows foreign operators, and I'm not at all embarrassed because I work for Société Générale, which is a French bank, but I am Italian, and I say this not only when I'm in Italy in general, but also when I'm in Paris, and my employers know that I am very Italian. In France and in Germany, just to mention two important countries, financial institutions have a light supervision, but they too will be controlled by the banking unit. I have two children who took their degree at the Catholic University, and foreigners must know that the leasing market has a clear civil law, a clear tax law for the non-boating sector, and we'll also have it starting next November, and the supervision. This is the stronghold of leasing in Italy. Thank you, President.
Thank you. Let's go back to Europe to understand what the European Commission has conceived for our countries to keep going and somehow strengthen too. Philip.
Stefano. Yes, I come from Brussels, so let me give you a bit of information what is happening at the EU level, specific now to the COVID-19 recovery. We already heard about the recovery fund from the other panelists here, and I think that's the most important point to start with. You all know, because you followed it in the media, I'm sure, that the total final agreement was 560 billion of EU recovery fund, and that money will be given to EU member states through grants and through loans. And I think Italy will receive around about 60 billion euros under that plan. All of this has to still be agreed in the details in Brussels, etc. But essentially by April next year, countries have to submit their recovery plans, and they then have to be approved by the European Commission. In that recovery plan, there are a lot of elements which are quite interesting, I think, for our industry. The main issues they are looking at is environmental transformation, the European Green Deal, which you've heard of, I'm sure, digital transformation, and resilience. And I think resilience is really interesting because that talks about readiness for future crises, readiness for second, third, fourth wave of COVID-19. We don't know how it will develop. And resilience of our supply chains. And I think that's really important. And the European Commission is now looking at reshoring, bringing supply chains back to Europe. So I think that's something interesting, especially for a country like Italy, which has such a strong accessory market in the nautical industry. I think the European Recovery Fund can finance a lot of relevant initiatives for our industry. such as infrastructure, marinas, we heard about it already, innovation investment by companies, by boat yards, deployment of clean technologies, all of these issues. I think that's really interesting. And that's something I think us as associations and with Confidence Clear Nautica, we are working on and we have to work on to make sure that this money also reaches our industry. The second point I wanted to mention is travel restrictions. You all saw the chaos back in March with border closures, but we still have a chaos because simply it's not possible to travel to some countries at the moment. There's a lack of coherent rules. Some countries are red areas, some countries are not red areas. Everyone has a different interpretation. So what the European Commission is trying to do now is to harmonize these travel rules and restrictions to make sure that we have a common understanding. What is a risk area? What is a red area? What is a green area? And I think that's important for us. It's important to travel to boat shows like this. It's important for boat shows to take place. And it's really important for the 2021 season because we want to make sure that people from Northern Europe can come to Italy to go sailing here and that flights are happening. I think that's really important. And we as EBI, we are part of a coalition of tourism and travel organizations, and we are really lobbying on this to make sure this happens. Then the second to last point I wanted to mention is the European Union is developing a new tourism strategy. This is starting in the next couple of weeks. And we want to see that the opportunities for our sector are really understood here. So we are not a mass tourism, we are not inside tourism, we are really outdoor tourism, which I think is really interesting and can be part of the recovery of European regions and of European tourism in a wider sense. So we really want to make sure that the new European tourism strategy has a strong role for nautical tourism and for boating tourism. We were quite happy recently the European Economic and Social Committee, which is an official EU institution, has an advisory role, released a report and opinion on transport and tourism in 2020 and beyond. And in that report is visible on their website and on our website. You can read it in Italian and French, whichever language. That has a lot of interesting measures. They recommend, for example, that there should be a reduced VAT rate possible for our sector, for marinas and for boat charter. And I think that's really important. And it's about cross-border nautical tourism routes and many other initiatives that can really support our sector. So I hope this has been an overview, but I think it will be a busy autumn, it will be a busy winter, and it will be a busy spring for us at EBI, and with Confidence Clear Nautica, I'm sure we can achieve something positive for the Italian industry as well.
Thank you, Philip, for this clear analysis, all the work you are doing for us at European level. Chiuderei prima del...
I would like to close now, before the final recap, which I would entrust to Professor Fortis, with a question for Mr. Tilly. Now, we've been talking about tools available for companies. Today, we are at Genoa Boat Show. This is a trade fair center, and the August decree in Italy introduced some new rules for the internationalization of fair trade and exhibition centers in Italy. We'd like to know how far we've gone in terms of this new tool. Yes, thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Francesco. Yeah, well, the August decree was a really painful goal. It managed to really be passed just at mid-August before the holiday season, but certainly it introduced important tools and even 300 million years loans with very, very low interest rate and up to 63 million euro grants and loans with no interest rates at all. We're now working with the Foreign Ministry, and we do hope we'll be able to have the implementation regulation ready by the end of this month. 30 seconds just to say that, of course, CMEST has additional tools to help trade and exhibition centers. We did quite a lot in the past in terms of internationalization of these centers, but now we can also be shareholders in these centers, of course, minority shareholders, in order to sustain the burden in the moment and support the recovery and the strengthening of these centers. Well, that's an excellent opportunity too. So thank you once again for your presence and for CMES's participation in the boat show. We're really happy about this cooperation, this synergy, and the fact that we are able to pass over these new this new to our members. Professor Fortis, the floor to you to draw the conclusions of today's conference. So what can we expect from, well, I was about to say the midterm, but let's say, what can we expect in the near future for the Italian SMEs? What are the risks, and mainly what are the new opportunities in this new normal era? Well, first of all, we need to consider a basic element, that is macroeconomic scenarios for the rest of 2020 and for 2021 are still really uncertain. We have some centers making estimates for future trends, but they keep updating their own data, change their own data just every 15, 20 days. Things change. There are constant evolutions in the way the pandemics is going to progress. Well, there was a first wave of COVID-19 pandemics, but we can see that many countries are still heavily affected, like South America, India. They are deep in the crisis and in the emergency right now. They have unbelievably high numbers of contagions, of infected people, and even of deaths. And even the US have a very uncertain overview for the future. In France and in Spain, infections are really boosting. Great Britain is still under control, while Italy and Germany seem to have a better situation, but infections are increasing in Italy too, unfortunately. So we can't really know what's going to happen over the next few months. Of course, we are much faster now in terms of data, but we still have uncertainties also in terms of when the vaccine is going to be ready and so on. So these uncertainties of course reflected in our data. So what can our enterprises and companies do in such an uncertain scenario? Well, I think we should say, when we talk about the manufacturing industry, but also other sectors like the yachting industry, we should say that over the years from 2015 through 2018 and early 2019, where great innovation and internationalization took place in our companies and enterprises. What I call industrial policies were implemented, even though when we hear industrial policies, we think about the state intervention, but what I'm talking about is the 4.0 enterprises. Then, of course, many tax benefits and changes were introduced. Investments in research and development increased. All sectors took advantage of the 4.0 industry with new tools, digitalization, and so on. So we basically got to 2020, just before the pandemics. Our export sector was the last to be affected by the new situation. That is that the world trade was imploding. I mean, up to March and April, our data in terms of exports were better than Germany's, France's, and other countries. So our system is very modern and very competitive. And I think this system has been shifting towards innovation, new products, new technologies. Also, when we talk about small and medium-sized enterprises, a great leap forward was made in terms of innovation and new products and product quality. And I think this also involved your sector, because the figures we've seen today are showing that you are better and better able to meet the market demand. You were more resilient than other sectors. But of course, if you didn't have good products to sell, that demand could not be intercepted. So Italian manufacturing enterprises are real leaders, and they're more than ready, as soon as the pandemic is over at a European and world level, to really play a crucial role in international markets. And there is another aspect to take into account. The real challenge, especially for Italy over the next few years, will be increasing the productiveness of the entire economic sector, because the manufacturing industry has been the fastest growing industry in G7 countries. And as I often say when I write articles or when I take part in conferences and when people talk about, the usual commonplace of Italy, they were not very well organized, they were very small and so on. And I always answer it in a different way. Yesterday I was talking to the Italian Confindustria's new president, and I showed him that enterprises up to 49 employees have a higher productiveness than France and Germany. And in large companies, we're all doing almost like Germany. But if you don't take into account the automotive industry, even in very large companies, the work productiveness of Italian companies is even better than the German one. So we really have to interpret data correctly, right? Yes, absolutely. We should stop saying that Italy has super tiny, very small companies and they were not productive and so on. In Europe, we're really only second to Germany. Well, of course, what we do have in Italy is the problem of a very heavy bureaucracy. We need to streamline the administration, and now the recovery fund is providing us with great opportunities. We just heard about the importance of digitalization, and these funds will certainly help us digitalize the companies and above all the public administration, because the Italian public administration is still lagging behind. There are ministries that can't communicate with each other because they don't have enough computers, or because they need specific authorizations to make specific investments in infrastructures and so on. Sometimes even to open a shipyard, I think you need so many authorizations and permits that will take you forever. So I think Italy is really sometimes going slow because we lack these digital tools. Well, so our hope for the future is that once the public administration is modern in Italy, is innovated, will be really unrivaled leaders. Well, yeah, there have been companies that have really made incredible leaps forward. If you think about Poste Italiana, they were really heavy and not very well organized in the past, and they've gone much further. If we think about the Revenue Agency or the Italian Pension Institute, Siemens, for example, I mean, there are pieces of the state that somehow spontaneously have embarked upon this path. And now I would like this strategy to be a centralized strategy with a supervision, with a coordination from above, so that the state can really be involved and can really step into the 21st century as the manufacturing industry has already done. Well, of course, we'll do that as long as this uncertainty allows us to. Let's say that the Italian boating industry is ready for that, is ready for these challenges. The Genoa Boat Show is here. So let's say we'll meet again in a year's time at the 61st Genoa Boat Show and the 4th edition of the Boat and Economic Forecast. And I do hope that the data we are hoping for at the moment will be confirmed and there will be even more growth in the future. I would like to thank my guests. I would like to thank the public for keeping a safe distance, and thank you for those who listen to us in streaming on our website. And of course, you'll be able to listen and watch this conference again in the future because it will remain on the website. Thank you.